We are recording. Welcome to our training behaviors session. So this session is, if you were on the call with us before, we're doing every 3 months the same 3 sessions about professional training and release dogs. This session, which is about training behaviors, and then after this at 2 o'clock, we will be doing a working through behavioral problems. So you don't have to join us for all of it. Wherever you are in the cycle, this is what we were hoping for. So in a year and a half time, you participate in these 3. The beginning, the middle, and the end is our goal for this to help you guys. But you're always more than welcome to join all of them, at least join 3 of them. And the time frame that you have the puppy. So I'm Suzanne Slickland, the puppy program manager for the North Central region. I have been at Canine Companions for approximately 23 years now. I have just realized that I can be the mother of our apprentices, and that's a little scary for me. But anyway, I digress. So we are going to we're going to talk today about teaching behavior. So this is the beginning process. The other thing that I really appreciate the fact that you guys are on the call today, because over time, we will probably, this session will probably change some. So taking opportunities to, get on this call over time, you don't have to do it every time, but it's going to be good for you to join in, because our philosophy, if you've been with Canine Companions, it's changing, but it's not changing. Let's first state that. Our emphasis is flipping, okay? So a lot of times, so in the past, we were really focusing on commands in context of the world, but focusing on what the dogs should not be doing and focusing on correction, okay? Well, we are flipping the script here, and what we're doing is we are focusing on the world in context to commands. So how do commands help us teach the dogs what we want them to do to be calm, interactive, social, focused, and willing to please? Okay, so we will still absolutely be using commands, but we are going to be talking a lot more about setting the dog up for success and having the dogs learn just to be in the world. And we're going to be talking a lot more about how are we catching the behaviors, focusing on the things that the dogs are doing well, and which are going to help to diminish the behaviors that we don't want the dog to do. Okay, so it's very much a matter of going, okay, how do I enhance the good behaviors with stopping the poor behaviors versus stopping the poor behaviors so the dogs are just good, okay? There's going to be questions about this as time goes on, and even us as trainers and as puppy program managers, we are really working together. Okay, how do we present this to you guys? We're catching up a little bit, to the dog training world on things. Rewarding is still there. Weaning off food is still there. Correction is still there. But when we use correction, we're going to talk a lot more about how and when do we use that. And that's going to be coming out as time goes on. So very much, especially if you guys are getting puppies, we really want you guys to really pay attention as you're getting into this new phase of raising a puppy, or if this is the first time that you're raising a dog, is really make sure that you are watching the recordings of the online classes, that you are, paying attention to the blog, reading the blog, because we are enhancing everything that is these changes that are taking place in how we present and how we communicate with you guys, how we want the dogs to learn. Okay, so I think So Joan Cooper at Yahoo, you have your hand up. Is that, do you have a question before I get started?
Well,
Sometimes
can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Well, this kind of segues between the last wonderful seminar and this one. I am turning in February 14th, my third CC dog.
Yep.
Love her to death. I have also reapplied for another one. In your opinion, is there any advantage or perhaps disadvantage to overlapping a new puppy with an about to turn in dog? I know that I just heard from our puppy manager that we have lots of puppies headed this way. I'm in South Central.
Yes. Yeah. 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 South Central and us are in a little bit of a different situation. Probably Northeast is probably pretty similar because they've always been on the lower end of having a long wait list. But I know that Southeast, North, and at least Northwest and Southwest are probably still have very long wait lists. But okay, so the question to overlapping, which is a great question. And there's like in the last session where we talked about the different behaviors of dogs, and then so you've got the dog temperament, that's scale, okay, and then you have the person's temperaments, okay, and then what is right. Now, some dogs it might be beneficial for, other dogs it may not be, it doesn't matter. Let's just say it's never unbeneficial, but it may not matter to a certain dog. It might be helpful with another dog. But the thing is that for some people, they don't want to overlap because for them personally, having the puppy and a dog getting ready for professional training isn't the best setup. Okay. For them, they want to just focus on the dog getting ready for professional training and then focus on the puppy without having the two. But some people like that. So is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? Absolutely not. The only answer that currently is happening is that there is an extraordinarily minimal overlap that's happening right now with the dogs, and it's generally going to be less than a month. That is what I think that's going to happen for at least Becca and I. We might move up for it. If there's any going to be benefit, it's usually going to be if there is like a 3-month, because you're still training the older dog and there's some consistency to that, which throws the puppy into that consistency. But we have so many people that raise dogs that never overlap and never have a problem. So some people will go, oh, that's the best way to do it is to do an overlap. It isn't the only way to do it. So, I don't.
I've never done it. I've never done it before. So I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I want the best for Cora, the puppy I have now, but she's ready. She's ready to head on to college. So
yeah.
But so I also am the type that likes to help out. And if this would help South Central, then I might say, okay, Becca, let's do it.
And that's definitely something that I would talk with Becca about, especially because sometimes there are times that we get into a bind, and the pandemic threw us into a huge loop that changed so much that we didn't want changed. Okay. Exactly. And then there's some things. Yeah. And so in other words, you're in that situation, you hear about it, talk to Becca. She'll tell you what she's going to need, because sometimes we're going to be like, please take it. We'll get back there overall, because it always happens. In my 23 years with Canine Companions, we have flown up and down with having a year wait to having literally you do the phone interview and you get a puppy immediately. Right now, I would probably say for the North Central region, we are, for first-time raisers, I've kind of gotten the wait down to about a 3 to 6 month wait. Repeat raisers is probably also about a 3 to 6 month wait for a puppy to be available. So, but I know some of the other regions still have a really hefty wait list. So, okay. I'm going to get back to the questions here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to share my desktop. And I'm going to re-find my, okay, there it goes. We are teaching teaching behaviors. All right. You just got a puppy. What do you do now? If you were on our national workshop last year, I believe we did it in October. And if you were, in our North Central, the workshop that I did, and probably, well, if you were in Southwest, because this is where this came from, Becky had used this a while ago, and we have adopted it now as our training starting point. That the big thing that you guys are focusing on with the dogs are preventing, proofing, teaching and proofing, okay? So those are the big things, the big concepts that as you get a puppy, we want you to think about how are we setting ourselves up for success? What are we teaching? And then how do we proof and make sure the dogs really understand those behaviors, okay? Now, and if you were at my workshop last year in 21, you saw this next slide. So this is my roundabout, and I even condensed it down just slightly because it was we had an extra loop here. So as you get a puppy, think of yourself as on a road, okay? And the road has roundabouts. And when you get off of a roundabout, you need to make sure that you're ready to get off of that roundabout, okay? As the easiest way to explain this, and just knowing that when you get to a different roundabout, you may realize that you're actually not ready for that stage yet, and you've got to go back down, okay? So when you start off and you get that little puppy, the very first thing that you need to do is the wellness, okay? You just got to get the puppy home into your house, start setting up a routine, start to get their vaccinations done, making sure that they're healthy, that they're in the ability to learn, okay? Because if they are sick, so you've got those puppies that have idiopathic diarrhea. They've got diarrhea or they might come with giardia. You really can't start training them right away because you kind of got to get that under control. Just a little reminder, if you guys can make sure that you're on mute, that will help because I get myself distracted when I hear little blurps and things like that come through. So if you could help me out by muting, making sure you're muted, it would be great. So you get the puppy, you're on that first roundabout, everything's going well, and then you start moving yourself up to what we call as prevent. So this is where you're making some sort of a goal for yourself. You're setting up the environment to be proactive for the puppy. You have an exit strategy if the puppy's not handling it well. You're setting yourself up for success. You're setting the puppy up for success. You're not making an overwhelming environment. Okay, so you think about that as you get into the second roundabout. Then as you get up into, you're starting to teach the puppy, you're training them what you want them to do, you're luring and shaping. We're going to get into all of this kind of stuff in a little bit here. You're doing the teaching, but then all of a sudden the puppy gets diarrhea or a urinary tract infection, and you've got to drop down 2 loops to get that taken taken care of. And then you can go back up to your teaching and training. And then as time goes on, you get yourself into the proofing stage of things, where this is your 19-month-old dog, and you are, getting ready for turn-in, and, you're making sure that they're have their self-control, and you're setting them up for, helping them to learn how to handle difficult environments, okay? Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting here. It's because practicing. Now, there are some commands that you're going to be practicing for a very long time, and that would be like the command sit, because that is one of the first commands that, we're going to teach the dog how to do. So they tend to know it. Now, some of our other commands like up are going to be things that we're taught later on. So while you are practicing sit, you are teaching, training, and proofing up, okay? Now, so some of the commands are coming along a little bit later on down the line, but once we understand that the dog understands, we acknowledge the dog understands the behavior in a variety of different environments, okay? That is when we're going to, have those expectations that maybe we're going to correct at this point if it's a safety issue. We're weaning off treats at this point. We're really evaluating, we're reflecting, where is the dog at in this on this roadmap? To maybe we need to take a step back. If the dog is failing, they're not offering sit the first time, you feel like you're using correction a lot, we really have to think about, is the dog ready for that environment, okay? So it's setting the dog up, building off of expectations, building off of distractions. We start calm and we work our way up. Okay, my little helicopter of truth is the fact when you get up here to the top and you're in what you feel is practicing, it's sitting there and going, okay, are we really ready for this? Is the dog prepared for this environment? And if they're not, we get on our little helicopter of truth and we putter on down to where we need to be. So the puppy gets sick. All of a sudden, it's got some panosteitis. You're up here practicing. You've got to fly that helicopter all the way back down to the bottom there, get them healthy again, do a lot of relaxation, and then work them back up. It's going to go a lot faster, but you're going to work yourself back up to the top. Okay.
Hey, and don't forget the fear period, because you'll forget. It's 7 to 10 months.
Right. Well, we're not necessarily going into this. Is just more of the learning phase of it. So absolutely, we have to look at where the dog is, and so on this slide here, you guys are really spending the majority of the time with the dog in making sure the dog is healthy, working through all of the things that normally happen with puppies as they're growing. You are preventing, you're being proactive, having a plan, making a goal, having an exit strategy, all that kind of stuff. You're spending a ton of time teaching and training, and then in the proofing here, where you're going to have to take into consideration those fear periods and the things that are typical for the age of a dog. So usually around 9 months of age, dogs are going to have a regression. Okay. I will hear so many times at 9 months of age, we've got this puppy that is, that has been doing great with house training. And then all of a sudden the puppy raiser calls me up and is like, they're having accidents in the house. They've never had accidents before. Why are they doing this? And I was like, it's that second fear period at 9 months. They're also, you got hormones playing in as the females and males start, because they're all being kept intact until they're a year old. So you've got hormones that are playing a part of that. And so you see regression. I always consider you've got 8-week-old puppy to the turn-in dog, and you think about it as a graph. And the line isn't a straight line up. So that's why when we talk about this as a roundabout, okay, a traffic circle, is that if you need to cut back, you can cut back, okay? It's not a linear process because dogs aren't linear and they're going to learn certain things at different points, but their brain, you guys have the hardest stage of raising a dog because you've got a puppy and then you've got essentially an older teenager by the time you turn the dog in. And the dog's mental, how they handle their environment is going to go up and down. And I consider it waves. So like I was saying, how it's not linear, it doesn't go straight up. So the puppy starts learning, and then usually around, you've got the fear period, but they're usually pretty in that excitement to learn. They're going up, and then usually around 6 months, we'll see a little regression, and then they start going down. The puppy raiser has to take a step back in training, and then they start to move themselves back up. They start learning and progressing and doing good, and then usually around 8 to 10 months of age, you see this regression, and then they start to go back up. But as they're going up, it's their mental, the waves are bigger when they are younger and smaller when they're older. Okay. So that's where it's just really important to make sure that as you're driving this road, that you understand that there are times that you're going to need to take a step back to help the dog be successful. Okay. So we're going to be talking a lot for the future about these zones, okay? So we've got the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. And so the green zone, and this is when we talk about those fear periods, we really need to make sure that really we're hanging out in the green zone where the puppy can focus and the puppy, can have, we don't push them over the top to go, okay, what might set them off, okay? So big things that are, and let me take a little step back here with these young puppies. They're going to take food hard, they're going to be distracted by their environment, all of that is pretty typical. So essentially with an 8-week-old puppy, you're constantly in the yellow to red zone. I take that back, yellow zone, because they're very much aware of their environment, okay? Now you don't want that 8-week-old puppy going into the red zone, because then that's when you can easily create those types of fears. We don't want to push them over the edge that will cause them to have a negative reaction later on. And here's the thing about where a lot of people get very confused about that initial fear period, is that a lot of times if the dog has some sort of a reaction between that 8 weeks to 12 weeks of age, first, we also have to remember that some puppies actually go into that a little bit earlier, and some puppies actually go into that fear period a little bit later, okay? Meaning it could be up to 16 weeks of age that they're in that fear period. 8 to 12 weeks of age isn't this magical number. It's the average number that most dogs go into, but some dogs might go a little sooner, some dogs might go a little bit later. And that's why we really want you to be very careful about the environments in which you're taking the dogs into at that young age. Because the other thing too is that especially noise, let's just state that, how the brain works is that if you do something in the fear period that throws the puppy into the red zone, okay? And we may not know it because our puppies will also show a lot of behaviors passively, not actively. So they're not freaking out, but they might go to sleep. And we're like, oh, they're handling this fine, they're asleep. When you watch, if you guys join us in the next session, I'm actually going to be showing you guys some videos of dogs. And, and there's some really super slight behaviors that sometimes we mistake for comfort, but in actuality, it's a little bit of stress. We'll go into that later, though. So with going back to if something were to happen between like that average 8 to 12 week of stage, like a loud noise happened and it startled the puppy. It doesn't mean that the next week the puppy is now going to be scared of loud noises. It could actually take 6 to 8 months for that actual behavior to manifest itself. And it may not be a noise sound. So a puppy reacts to a noise that it got scared at 11 weeks of age. It's seemingly fine up until an older stage, okay? And all of a sudden they start having a fear of surfaces, okay? Sometimes fear isn't, well, not sometimes, all the time, fear is not logical, you know? And so it's not going to be loud noise equals fear of loud noises. It could transfer to something else, okay? But we can get people all worried about that fear period between the ages of 8 and 12 weeks of age. The biggest thing you guys need to know is this, is that you have to take that into consideration when you have a puppy. Be aware of these zones. Like, when does it seem like the puppy's starting to get into that yellow zone where we really need to back off and take them out of the situation, get them back to the green zone so that we don't accidentally send them over into that red zone. If we spend too much time in the red zone with certain behaviors, this is when puppy raisers are tending to have problems with excitability and distraction is probably more the issue that you're going to see, where we have to really pay attention to what do we allow the dogs to do and how do we set them up for success. But like the lecture that I just did before, informational session, because I'm not lecturing to you guys, is that every dog is going to be a little bit different, and we have to just take that into consideration, and we just have to try our best, okay? Because sometimes if something is going to happen and it is going to negatively influence that dog, that means that that dog's temperament was already predisposed to that, and it was going to happen at some point, okay? But we can do certain things at this young age, or as you're walking up that traffic circle, to where we have to pay attention, okay, how are we setting the dogs up for success? And not just keep going, well, they're 9 months old, so they should be acting like this. Because what should be right for one puppy is probably wrong for another puppy, or it is wrong for another puppy. So the biggest way that you guys can pay attention to these zones is, in the green zone, the puppy is going to be pretty handler focused. They're going to take treats softly. They're going to easily respond to commands, and then they're gonna have a relaxed body. If you guys see me moving, I put the camera so it makes it look like I'm actually looking at you guys and not off to the side, because I'm looking at the PowerPoint, and so I can't see behind the camera. The yellow zone is they're partially handler focused, okay? They take food hard. They're slow to respond to their handler, and their body is tense. So I'm going to give an example here. So I have a border collie at home. He is 6 years old, and I have two actually, but the 6-year-old one, he has a lot of anxiety. He's a border collie. And so I was actually noticing with him, when I practice in my living room, he takes treats so nicely. But when I practice outside in front of the house, he's not biting at my hands, but he's taking the treats a lot harder. And all of a sudden I had this realization. I was like, oh my gosh, he's taking the treats harder out here. He seems engaged, but his mental zone is a little elevated, okay? He's more in the yellow zone than he is in the green zone when he's inside the house, because there's much more going on around him. For a lot of the time, you guys are going to be in the yellow zone with the dogs, okay? Because they are out there learning how to handle the world around them. They have to experience these things, but we are then there to help bring them back down to the green zone so that they are comfortable with knowing what to do when encountering a level of stress, okay? So, and we could go into stress a lot because there's good stress, normal everyday stress, and then there's bad stress. Okay. And if you think about it, yellow zone is your normal, I'm learning. Everyone here is focused on what I'm talking about. You guys are a little bit heightened. You are not necessarily focusing on what's going on around you, but you're focusing here. You're learning. Now, a family member could come in and you kind of like, stop, I'm on the phone, I'm listening to this. So you kind of act differently than if you were like watching, this is the 9th time you've watched this, where you could look away from and talk to the person. You kind of think about that. This yellow zone is learning, okay? But we have to make sure that we're scaled more down to the green zone versus scaled more up to the red zone. Because once we get into the red zone, learning stops. There is no more learning going on, okay? This is where a lot of dogs end up getting to, especially with distractibility or excitability, okay? And this is where sometimes we can inadvertently reward behaviors that we don't want to reward, and it just sets us up for more problems later on because they learn to live in the red zone, okay? Now, these are some things that are going to be changing. Okay. Now, you guys are there's going to be some eye rolling. I'm going to be straight up. I know you guys are going to be doing it. Okay. But we are going to be changing our terminology. Am I probably going to say command? Absolutely. Because guess what? Sometimes it's hard for me to switch the brain that is so used to saying one word. Okay. But we're going to be cueing dogs. So a cue is a verbal prompt that indicates a reward will happen, okay? So a cue equals cooperation, all right? That is the big thing how we're defining the difference between a cue and a command, okay? A command is a verbal prompt that indicates a correction will happen. So a command equals avoidance. So we have stressed more in the past that if you don't do a command, you're going to get a correction, okay? So essentially, we are teaching them that if they don't do something right, something bad is going to happen, okay? And the hope is that they're going to learn to avoid that and just respond immediately. Now, a cue is equal to cooperation. We want the dogs to respond because they know something good is going to happen, that they can follow us, listen to us, and not just do it out of avoidance of something that is unpleasant, okay? The expectations with our commands are absolutely the same. And for our puppies, okay, how we have been teaching, and I know at least for the last 2 years because of me doing all the online classes, we have taught how to teach a dog a cue versus avoiding getting corrected because they didn't do a command, all right? So at Canine Companions, we teach behaviors through positive reinforcement and reinforcing responsiveness through a reward. So, but we want to have the dogs understand that they also have to have self-control. So we don't want a dog that's just randomly offering behaviors because it's going to get a treat, okay? We want them to know that they have to be calm, and when they're calm and they're doing the things that we want, they're going to get rewarded. I do want to start, I'm going to push through so that I can do some demonstrating with Camila. Okay, so another terminology we're going to be using a lot more is what's called a marker, all right? And so markers can be something that's also physical, so that could be a bed. The bed is a marker for where you go when you relax. Another verbal cue, and this is where it gets a little confusing, and I'm going to be very honest with you, between a motivator, which we've said in the past as a cue, will help you get through. So you're going to give a verbal cue, a yes, okay? That says to the dog that they did the right behavior, okay? Or a food reward, which is also a cue that the behavior they just did was right. Okay, so see, it's how that can kind of get a little confusing. We'll all work it out, and we're all going to say things differently. We just know we're on the right track here with the philosophy. Okay, is applied at the time the puppy does a desired behavior. It indicates the right behavior. This is where timing is really critical, especially, so food is, and timing, well, timing is just critical overall. We need to make sure we're rewarding the behaviors that we want, okay? Now, we're going to be redirecting, and you've heard us say this a lot before, but redirecting is a lot of the behaviors that you're going to be doing that's setting the dogs up for what exactly do we want. The dog is getting into the trash or starting to get into the trash, or the dog is starting to jump. We're going to redirect them away from doing that behavior, and we're going to teach them the more appropriate response, okay? So redirecting is used during excitability, frustration, or fear. The dog is acting fearful for something. We're going to redirect them away from that fear to something that's more positive. The puppy raiser redirects the puppy away from a distraction and focus on, okay. I said that. Interrupting behavior. So interrupting is used at the moment the puppy is about to do an undesirable behavior. So you see the dog is about to get into the trash. You're going to interrupt the dog. Now, this is where there's going to be a variety of different things that we can do that's going to interrupt the behavior. First, we're going to try verbal cues. So that is calling the dog's name, making a noise, doing something like that. If the dog isn't, you tell the dog to sit. And they're about to stand, we're going to use leash pressure to get them to go back into, to do the behavior that we want. Sound would be like clapping. We're going to block the dog, so we're going to take a step into them. We're going to lean into them. We're going to do something that's going to interrupt the behavior that we don't want, getting them to refocus away, and then we redirect them to do something else. A scruff, a leash correction, maybe a squirt bottle will be used in these types of things. But this is a range. An 8-week-old puppy who's barking in the crate and you use a squirt bottle to interrupt the behavior, to correct that behavior, that doesn't usually work for an 8-week-old puppy. A squirt bottle typically causes more frustration, okay? So when we talk about correction, we really want to make sure that we are utilizing correction when correction is needed, okay? Because a lot of times, and I've been really evaluating this in our in-person classes, we have been focusing a lot on if the dog is not doing something, we just give them a pop with a leash, okay? Don't. And what we need to start doing is going, okay, let's have the dog make the correct decision. So you say the dog's name and they turn and look at you. Great, beautiful, perfect. It gets them to come back. Do we need to give a correction there? No. Now, if you continue to have this problem where you're trying to do this, where you are trying to use positive reinforcement to get them to do the behaviors that we want, but they're still choosing something else, we have to evaluate. Are they ready for that environment? What's going on? How well do they know the behaviors that we're asking them? Do we need to take a step back in training before we just go, don't, okay? So for an example, I was at a puppy class, one of our in-person classes, and we had a puppy raiser that had a 4-month-old puppy who was coming to sign in, and he was a little bit late. He was coming over, and I could see he was a little frustrated, and he came up to the table, and the 4-month-old puppy was like, "Ooh, people," and put his front feet up onto the table, and the puppy raiser was just like, "Don't," and gave him a correction. That puppy had no idea why they were getting corrected for, okay? So in reality, and we have always stressed this, is that when you are rushed, okay, it really is important to make sure that you self-reflect and go, am I just reacting and correcting because I'm not really paying attention and helping set the dog up for success? Or does the dog really need a correction? Okay. So, but in most situations where I'm finding we're jumping to correction when it's really unnecessary to do that, or we haven't exactly taught the dog what the behaviors are that we want in that situation. It was unfair because of the roadmap where that 4-month-old puppy was mentally, where the puppy raiser thought the puppy should, because that's just wrong, so I'm just going to correct. We need to teach the puppy why they were getting corrected, because if they're getting a lot of corrections at this young age, we teach the dogs that learning isn't really fun and that I just get random corrections. And so we tend to get dogs that don't want to offer behaviors. You're going to start to hear us talking a lot more about self-control, but also the willingness to offer behaviors. Because a lot of times when we have dogs come into professional training, they sit here and go, I am not offering anything because I will probably offer the wrong thing and I'm going to get it corrected. We want them to go, okay, I'm about to offer something. I'm not 100% sure. Can you help me out a little bit? And us being good handlers, we're going to help set them up. All right, got to move on here. This one probably needs to be a lot longer. Catching, shaping, and luring. I'm going to actually demonstrate that without going a ton into this because a lot of these things you know, but I'm going to show that with little Camila. Why use food? Food is a good reinforcement. I'm going to show you guys the difference between bribing and, do I have luring? Oh my gosh, bribing versus rewarding. So I'm going to demonstrate a bribe versus a reward. And how do we work through this? Well, I'll talk about the food process, which is meaning, and I'll get you guys this PowerPoint since we're kind of flying through it. I'll share it on the community page. Actually, all of the PowerPoints for today will go up on the community page. I'll figure out where to put it, and I'll make sure you guys all know. But knowing that the teaching, so teaching and learning, where you guys are going to be spending a good number of time, food happens before, during, and after, and the food is in the hand, so it's visual. When we start getting the puppies a little bit older, offering knows better, you're in the generalizing part, we want to start strengthening the process. They're only strengthening the responses. We want to make sure that we are rewarding after. Food is not in hand. The food is on the table, the food is in the bait bag, the food is in your pocket. Now, when you get to that 9-month-old stage, you might need to take a step back and go into phase 1 or 2 here. And using that to help set the dog as a way of redirecting or interrupting behaviors that we don't want, okay? Keeping them, and this is where we need to remember our thresholds. Food is going, if you're weaning off food and it's doing great in your house, but outside because your neighbor dog is barking, it's not working, you need to have food in your hand. So this is where you're going to have food in your hand at certain times and food out of your hand at another time. By the time the dog turns in, we want the food in our pockets, okay? Out, and they only get randomly rewarded. Okay, so that is how we're slowly weaning off. So we use food a lot, visual, helping, showing, luring, catching. We start to move the food away. They're still getting food a lot, but it's in our pocket. It's not visual. Unless we're in a difficult scenario or a scenario in which they are still learning, the food comes out. By the time they're in matriculation, they can still be getting food or they can be off of it, but we need to make sure that we're rewarding them frequently. Other types of motivators, verbal praise, play, and petting. We can use petting especially in a lot of situations when we're catching behaviors to help reinforce the behavior that we want. I taught my one dog how to stretch because every morning I caught him stretching and I would rub his sides and I would be like, good stretch, yay. And then finally he got, because I was rewarding him through petting, him doing the stretching and me saying stretch, he paired it all together and boom, one day I said, Ivan, stretch, and he did his kitty stretch. And from then on, I use petting as a way to do this because some dogs might get distracted by food and sometimes petting is going to be a toned down version to help get what we want so we don't send them over until the red zone. All right. A couple of people here, unmute and tell me, what do you see here? What's on the screen?
Blue dot.
Blue dot.
Blue dot, okay. Now, we all have to thank Becky in Southwest for this because yesterday, literally, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going into my PowerPoint for today. Think about the blue dot, and this is something that is very easy for all of us to do, trainers alike, okay? Is to focus on if the blue dot is the inappropriate behavior, okay? It's always easy to focus on what we don't like versus the entire white screen is all of the good things that the puppies are doing. We want to make sure that we are taking the time to reward at all different points during the day. And it doesn't have to be with food. It can be play. It could be petting. It can be just a verbal good boy. Help them to understand they're doing the right thing. Okay, instead of just only focusing when they're doing the wrong thing, because I tell you, I have taught our border collie to pounce the screen, the TV, pounce towards the TV, and then turn and look at me because that's what we taught, because I was only focusing on the bad behavior without taking the time to really teach him what I want, that jumping at the TV screen is not the right thing to do, okay? He still does the bad thing because I haven't trained it appropriately. So think about if you're struggling with a behavior issue, are you only focusing on the negative? What could you be focusing on to help catch him doing the right behaviors to set him up for success? Where are you at on that roadmap with that one particular behavior? Okay, guess what? I'm gonna get the puppy out. I don't wanna share screen. Stop sharing screen. Okay, I hope I'm still, okay, I'm still spotlighted for you guys. I want to say something. Well, this leash, so Elizabeth Boughton, who I do not know if is on the call earlier when I looked, she wasn't on it, but she might not be. But this is, they have these leashes that I believe they're called like guide dog leashes. You can get them on the PetStar. These are like the best leashes in the world because you can make it shorter or longer. And usually they have a clip in the middle so you can take it long, medium, short. This is the best type of puppy leash. I need to get another one. Just know they're guide dog leashes. They're awesome. All right, let me get little Missy and we're gonna demonstrate. Getting her kibble. Clearly, this lecture needs to be about 5 hours long. So one of the things, I was having a conversation yesterday with was it yesterday? It must have been my question and answer session. And we were talking about one of the puppy raisers was having some problems with distractibility at the pet store, okay? So now Camila here is almost 5 months old, I believe, okay? And she doesn't know me from a box of rocks, okay? I literally walked her before class and I didn't ask her to do any commands. And as you can see, she's just kind of wallowing on the floor here because trying to get the gentle leader off because she doesn't want it. But I'm going to do a bunch of different things. And this is just a snippet of so many things that we can talk about. This is why we will definitely probably go. I was like, oh, we can just do an hour. I'll do like 15 minutes of the PowerPoint, and then the rest of it will be me demonstrating. Clearly, that's not going to happen. Oh, look at this. Okay, so this is bad handling right here, okay? So what did I just let her do? I'm distracted by talking to you guys, and her gentle leader is not tight right there. I was letting her wallow around on the floor without paying attention to her, and she just learned to paw her gentle leader off. Okay, so there are so many things that you guys can focus on, and it can just drive you crazy. And it looks like someone just put up the leash. Thank you. I love these leashes, and the leather ones, so nice on the hands. Okay. So here's the thing. I picked Camila because she's young. She's a little bit older than an 8-week-old puppy so that we can actually show what I'm asking, because I know her puppy raiser, Elizabeth, has worked on a lot of these things. But I want to kind of help you guys to see some of these things that are really important for setting yourself up for success. Because we have tended to focus so much, and I'm going to be a better handler here and pay attention to her, I'm going to let her rub a little bit on the gentle leader here, but I'm going to make sure she doesn't get it off, okay? I might have to tighten it, but I'm holding it while I'm talking so that if she paws at it, it doesn't slide off. Being a really good handler, I would absolutely tighten it so that I don't have to keep messing with it. So she's pawing it here. It's so easy for us to go, okay, the dogs have to learn all of these behaviors. And so I need to constantly be talking at her and constantly going, okay, you're stop, okay, stop. And you're always trying to stop the dog from doing something, okay? She's also trying to mouth the gentle leader. She's biting at it, the leash a little bit here. She's doing a little bit of whining, and I'm tightening up the leash just slightly there so she can't pull it off her nose. This also is a thing that happens when you guys are going with those young puppies out for a walk, and they're picking up every pine cone as you're going, okay? The pine cones, I end up just sometimes letting that 8 to 4 month old puppy hold that pine cone, and then I just use food to help distract them away from it, but reward them for the better behavior. But sometimes if we're constantly on them, and I've talked to so many puppy raisers that are like, I hate going for a walk with the puppy because I'm constantly pulling things out of their mouth. Now, if the puppy is ingesting rocks, absolutely stop them. But if the puppy is just holding the item, pay attention, but don't constantly try to stop it, because you're not going to. Puppies are going to pick things up. Now, here's the thing that's going on with her. So I'm the type of person that, because I've been so focused on control, I've got to get the puppies to be controlled. And so you've got to start with control right away. So I would be over here constantly going, okay, I get my food out, which I don't even know where it's at, here, and making her sit. Now, There are absolute times where we need to make sure that we are standing here in the dog's appropriate position and we are rewarding them for the behaviors that we want, okay? She's 4 months old, so maybe we're starting to go out into public with the dog. I'm going to absolutely make sure
A
that
workshop.
set up for success. Someone is unmuted. Can you guys make sure that you're muted?
You're muted.
Release. Come here. Now, other times, I'm going to make sure that I just kind of let her do what she wants. So she now knows that I have food, so she's going to be a little bit more focused on me. But some of that wallowing around on the floor, I'm not going to stop, because for her age, I want her to learn on her own that pawing at the gentle leader is not going to get her anywhere. I have to pay attention. Is the gentle leader on properly? And I'm holding the leash so that if it does start to come off, that that I can stop it before going. Now here she was where she was just barking at me. This is a little bit of frustration. I'm trying to ignore it because as soon as she barked, I looked over at her. So I'm gonna do something without giving her a command. So
Suzanne, it's great. It's great you didn't pick the perfect dog. It's wonderful to see her misbehaving and doing things that we all struggle with.
Well, exactly. That's why I definitely didn't want a perfect dog. So here's the thing is that I have to set myself up for success. She knows I have food now, okay? And she is also young and probably gets bored real quickly, okay? So what I need to do, come on, what are you doing? I need to, and this is hard, so it's not going to be an easy road, a lot of this. It's just going crazy. She's rubbing on my leg. And she's rubbed and then sat. So this is where we can sometimes inadvertently teach. We accidentally catch them doing the wrong thing and then direct them to something else, but we inadvertently teach them that you rub, that gets my attention, I sit because that's what you want, or I bark at you, and then you're going to turn, say, give a command, and then I get the reward, okay? So she's barking at me. She's whining a little bit, and I'm not actually going to use food here. When she's quiet here in a second, I'm not going to use food because that is such a strong reward that she might go, if I bark long enough, I get that really good reward. Oh, she's yellow and I can't see her behind me. I'm trying to look at the screen. Let's go. So she laid down on her own. Good girl. Good girl. Good. Come on. Good girl. She laid down on her own, okay? And I then said, let's go. She quieted, so there was no more whining. I got up and moved, okay? Now, here's the thing. You don't want to do this if you're at puppy class, or so you come to my in-person puppy class, and you're standing here with the puppy barking at the back of you. There are times and places for us to do some of these things, okay? So like, I need to be a better handler and not let her do what she's currently doing here. So I'm gonna move away from her. And this is boredom. I really don't actually, this is actually frustration. What she's doing right now is frustration at the gentle leader. It's not really that her face itches. She wants it off. So there's a lot of catching. Let me do some training to kind of get, well, this is training. Let's just first state that. the main point with me saying about this waiting out, there are time and place to do that. And so if you're at a grocery store and the puppy's barking at you, don't sit there waiting for her to be quiet. You got to stop that because grocery store is an inappropriate place for them to be barking. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense versus you doing this in your house where you have to wait them out for it. That's going to be better. Release. Good. Okay. So I'm going to set her up for a little bit here, and I'm going to try to not use a lot of commands, but I want to get her to look at me, or cues. I want to get her to look at me, and I want her to offer and get rewarded for just being calm, which is going to be pretty easy because she is actually a pretty calm dog. Okay, so I'm going to prime her. Hey, let's go. Come on. Good girl. Yeah, come on. Because she's young, I'm going to get her up and to move. There's someone who has a camera on, just to make sure everyone has the full screen of me. If you could turn your camera off, I would be greatly appreciative. So to prime both the name and or yes, let's just state this. We're going to start off where we're going to catch behaviors. Thank you. I'm going to let her know that yes means you did the right thing. So I'm going to take 5 pieces of kibble and I'm going to say yes and give her the kibble. Now here's a little interesting thing here. Come here. And I really wish I had the camera. I could work it better. Yes. Okay, the first time she took yes, the kibble, she chewed it a lot. I could hear her crunching it, okay? We might need, yes, smaller kibble, softer kibble, for her to not take so long to think about chewing. We want her to get the reward and then move on. So we spend some time just saying yes. Yes. This really, she's taking too long to get through the food. I would definitely change this up. Yes. Good girl. Then what I'm going to do is this. Let's go. Because I have the food in my hands. I'm not practicing on any position here. Yes. Good girl. And I rewarded her for just going into the sit. Let's go. Yay, good girl. Yes. Good girl. Good job. Let's go. Yes. Good job. I want her to know that when she hears yes for a behavior, she knows a reward is coming. That is marking a behavior. So let's go. So yes, that is a mark. I just marked the behavior that when she puts her rear on the ground, she gets a reward. Let's go. All right, I'm going to try something. It may or may not work. I'm waiting for her to offer something. So she might get frustrated. She's barking at me because the thing I'm wanting to show is I could do the luring, okay? You guys, especially if you've raised, well, all of you have raised dogs before, or are about to raise dogs, I guess. If some of you guys are new, is that we know how to lure. okay? Put the treat right at the nose and lay down to the ground. I want you guys to focus more on seeing if we can catch behaviors that we want them to do. Okay, so I wanted a reward there, but she, if I just, and I know we want to stop that barking, but sometimes we just kind of have to wait it out. Let's go. Good girl. So I'm giving a verbal good girl because she didn't bark at me this time. Good girl. Good job. She rolled back on her hip. Okay? I'm going to reward her here because she's being quiet. She rolled back onto her hip. Let's go. Come on. I am doing a little bit of, I'm catching here a little bit more. What I want her to do is lay down. And see if she'll offer this on her own. I know you guys are like, just lure her. And I could do that, and that is completely fair. But it's also something to get her to offer on her own, which a lot of times we don't like to have the patience for, okay? So she's a little confused here. She did roll on her hip. And this might actually be a problem that Elizabeth is having. Yes, good girl, good job. And as soon as she laid down, good girl. I'm gonna reward her for, so I'm doing that luring here a little bit more so that she gets rewarded for knowing that laying down is a good thing. Let's go, come on. Good girl. Hey. Come on. Good girl. So she went onto that hip. Again, the point of all of this is getting her to go, I'm going to lay down on my own, and that's going to help build calming behaviors, okay? Right now, she realizes she wants my attention. She wants to get rewarded, but she's frustrated, which I have to be careful because of the zones. But I can't move away from this because I don't want to accidentally reinforce that barking. Now, I'll, in a second here, if I can get her to go into a down on her own. Good girl. Good girl. Good job. Come here. So she, good girl, yay. Good girl, good job, yes, good job. She slid off of the bed and I was like, I'm gonna take that, okay? I want her to lay down on the bed because I want her to learn that the cue is, this bed is the cue to lay down, okay? Yes, I could lure her, but I want her to figure this out on her own. Yes, good girl, good job, good girl, let's go. Yay. Good girl. I'm rewarding that hip because she still needs help. and I'm not going to stare at her. Because one of the things that I think that's happening with staring, yes, good girl, good job. Yay, good girl, let's go. Good girl, yay, good job. The staring at her is reinforced. Oh, I almost rewarded. So I wanted to reward the hip flip, but I got a little bark out there. So I had to be careful. She's frustrated. Good girl. Where's the butt? There it is. Good job. Good girl. Let's go. Good girl. She rolled on that hip. Yes, good girl. I'm giving her a little bit of a jackpot because barking at me is release. Yay, good girl. Good job. It's what we don't want. I got to remember not to look at her. I so want to stare at her. Yes. Good girl. Good job. Release. Come on. Good girl. Now there's going to come to a point here. Yes. Good job. Good girl. Release. Yay. Oh. Okay, so she just nose punched me. So I was actually thinking as I was, that hurt, I needed to actually give her better reward here. Good girl. Because lots of pets. Good girl. Oh. How do you get those rewards? Good girl. Nice job. Good girl. Release. So how I messed up a little bit there was, hold on real quickly. Okay, I think I fixed it. Okay, so I'm going to move back here a little bit because look what she did. Now, here's the thing is I don't know what Elizabeth has taught her, okay? So, I know she's probably taught her down. Has she taught her a lot of like laying on a bed? I'm actually not 100% sure. Good girl. But this is one of those things that when you guys are hanging out, watching TV, or good girl, good job. I'm going to slip the gentle leader off of her nose just so there's not an extra fight here where she starts to paw because then we're working on something different. So we kind of have to remember to take one thing at a time. Don't try to work on multiple things. Trying to get her to be calm and not fidget with the gentle leader, those are two different things. So I've got to pick one of those two things. So I can sit here and just randomly reward her and telling her she's a good girl for just hanging out, okay? So this behavior here, so Elizabeth guarantee has started the introduction to the down command. But what I really want you guys to focus on, yes, we're going to be doing a lot of luring to help them learn, to get into the commands, the cues that we want. But we also want to make sure that we teach them that when we offer the behaviors that we want, good things are going to happen. And so I want her to make the decision that if she lays down and she is quiet, she is going to get rewarded. Barking at me is not going to get her rewarded, okay? So in that situation right here where she was barking at me for attention, good girl. She was going, okay, if I bark at her, she's not really interacting with me, but if I lay down, I'm getting this reward. Now I'm just going to give her pets, good girl. And I'm going to give calm pets, good girl. And then I'm also going to make the decision that at some point, because of her age, I need to make sure to end this training session. Release, come on. And then get her to get up. Come on, come on. What are you doing? I'm going to change direction because she's like, I'm comfy here. Why do I need to get up? Come on. What are you doing? Yay, good girl. She's like, you're a weirdo. Good girl. Good job. The other thing here is, we'll move that out of the way. So she's a pretty calm dog to begin with. And so she's checking in with me a lot. So she's sniffing. Yes, good girl. No, we're not going to bark at me. I'm looking away from her. What I'm actually trying to do, because I want her to come closer to me, she's just demanding at me. Yes! Good girl! Good job! Yes! Good girl! Yes! Good job! Yes. Spend time working with them, offering the behaviors to come to us, that looking at us is a good thing, that good girl, come here. Good girl, yes. I want you closer though, good job. Rewarding her that this interaction with us, instead of us making them do it, they are choosing to do it on their own, okay? Because again, before we were taking a lot of focus on us luring them. We want them to go, if I do these things, good things happen. Okay, I'm going to read some questions here. Okay, there was the leash. Oh, there's Elizabeth. Elizabeth, does she bark at you a lot?
Just started, so this is really, really, really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, she lost her upper premolar. Okay, this is okay. I use Zooks. Okay, so yes, that's another thing too that's taking into consideration here. So she's at that age where she's losing teeth, and when you were working on with food, you might have to try something different, because again, going back into that chart of learning, she isn't learning good girl, good job. I'm rewarding her for she laid down and she's not barking. Now, she really wants a treat from me, and so this is where I kind of have to really be focused on what I'm rewarding, what I'm not rewarding. And I feel like I've jumped around here a little bit. Right, so Linda I noticed you're not saying the command down, reason just to have her think on her own. Right, and the other thing too with that is that down is more of a calm behavior, okay? So that if she offers to go into a down on her own, that's where the reward is gonna happen, and that's more of a calm behavior that we want. I'm gonna start working a little bit here in the next 10 minutes, and we can go over a little bit because my next thing isn't until 2 o'clock. We're at 1:23. I can't do math, especially right now with my brain, is working on interrupting the barking behavior. So there's this ignoring the barking, and then there is catching the behavior to stop getting it to bark. But I think, and that really maybe this is where I'm kind of going into the next session, which is stopping unwanted behaviors. For her, I have to take into consideration, so that barking is very, very normal for her age. Come here. I'm luring her over to me, and I'm going to move back just a little bit here so you guys can see her a little bit more. And so I could spend more time rewarding her for food, but then what I'm just doing over a period of time is just popping her food full of food, and I am teaching her that if I start barking, you'll start pulling out the food. Okay, so remember, you can reward in other ways. We're catching her, teaching her that if she chooses to go into a down, that's going to be a good thing. Good girl, yes, good job. Now, I'm going to pay attention to her body language, which is what we're going to get into in the next session, is interrupting behaviors, okay? So I need to do something that if she starts to bark, I need to do something that's not going to reinforce it, okay? So this is where it's that precursor, because as soon as she started to bark, I wanted to get up and walk away, and I didn't do it fast enough. This is where our abilities come into, and that where we make mistakes, okay? So she is wanting to bark at me, so I'm going to try and do something. I'm going to wait for her to stop barking. Good girl. I'm going to reward that behavior. And now I'm going to look away from her because I definitely know that looking at her will get her to bark at me. I'm going to wait here. Good girl. Good job. Good girl. I'm going to reward her for that. Good girl. Going to get another reward. And I am probably going to use more food on this, but I got to really make sure that I'm not rewarding. I think she's going to get frustrated here in a moment. So I'm going to up the expectation and go, release, come here. Good girl. Get her to do something so she's not offering the barking, okay? So this is where, now if she starts to bark, I could get up and just walk away from her. I'm going to just try it. I'm going to sit here. Good girl. Good quiet. Good job. See, in my little brain there, I'm like, do I get up and walk away from her? Good girl. Good job. Because maybe we'll teach her when she's in a down. This is when she's getting attention. Good girl. You're a good girl. I can talk to you here. Yeah, this is a good girl. Good job. Release. Come here. Good job. Come on. Yay. We're not going to fix it here in this moment. Come on. Good girl. But we have to teach her and practice it in a way that if she is barking at me, she doesn't get rewards. If she lays down and is quiet, she's going to get rewards from me. And the hope is that this will get tired out. Now, over a period of time, if this is just not working, then we're going to have to do something different, okay? And this is where it's like catching the behavior before it starts. Good girl. Good job. She laid down. She kind of slid a little bit out of view there. Okay, so now she's barking, so I'm just going to walk away from her. And I could technically leave, but I'm not going to give her any sort of attention unless she does something better. And you know what, actually, what I also could do here is she chose to go into a down, which is great. And now she's starting to be a little quiet, except for right there, is that she could get bored with me because I'm just not giving her any sort of attention, and wander off away from me. I mean, because that's that thing is like, it's getting her to go that barking gets no attention. I'm going to try something else here, which is the interrupting part of it. So I'm going to look at her, but this is where it's hard with the don't. Good girl. Looking at her is really a problem. Good girl. Let's go. Come on. I was going to give her food, but I'm not going to do it. Good girl. Come on. Good girl. I'm going to put her into the crate for a little bit. Good girl. I decided to put her in the crate because, one, we have to give her a break from this, because if we don't do that, then we're just going to reinforce that barking, okay? Now, she might do a little bit of barking in there, but she settled down pretty quickly. She actually seems, she's protesting a little bit. She whined, but she curled up in the back, okay? So if you're doing something where, like, this barking situation is not getting better, it's just going to be, if you're going to bark at me, I'm going to go and put you away. Because utilizing a correction, it's a catch-22. And so this is where it's not to say that we couldn't do it, but it's saying, could we try to do this without the correction? Because when they're in this learning stage and she's offering behaviors for me, if I start correcting, I start getting, offering behaviors is kind of a bad thing. So we need to learn. And probably the biggest thing that I want you guys to think about is, and I hear this a lot of times from a couple of my local puppy raisers, that when I do this, where I do like the catching behavior, where I let them offer the behavior, they're just like, oh my gosh, I want to jump in there and do it. And you didn't know what was going on in my brain. I was legit going, oh my gosh, she's never going to do anything. And I'm going to look like a fool here, you know? And so a lot of people want to just jump in and start helping them, okay? But we need to figure out, how do we get them to offer behaviors to be calm on their own? And it's a matter of going back, okay, where is she at? Where is she at in the learning curve, those waves? What do I reinforce? What do I not reinforce? When do I notice that I accidentally reinforced an inappropriate behavior, and then move on from there? I hope that this was helpful. There.
It was extremely helpful.
Okay.
You can't imagine just watching you work through that stuff. And because, we always see the good dogs, right? And then it's like, how do you handle these dogs that, just really aren't getting it? Or how do you get them to do what you want and being patient? So thank you.
Yeah. So, and this is where, because we could show you so much stuff, and that's where in my brain I'm like, I could do this and I could do that, or I should have said this and everything. And so it's a process, okay? And a lot of times we want to move up that road really quickly, and we just can't do that a lot of the times. We really have to step back and go, okay, it's okay if they're not as fast as some of the other dogs. So for example, I just had the thought, what is the behavior that I'm thinking about? Well, we hear this a lot with like siblings, and I can't remember if this was the last session or this session that I was saying about, is like comparing siblings together. We really can't do that, because I know you can't compare me to my sister. My sister, I love her, but she's an intense person. I'm laid back, go with the flow. When there's stress, I'm an avoider. She is a fighter. And that's the thing with these dogs, is that we need to, all these words that make us go, they need to be at a certain place. Every dog is going to get there a little bit slower or a little bit faster. The thing is that when we are out in public, okay, what is going on is going to be different than what we're working on at home. So this ignoring when I'm out in public is not going to happen. Okay, I'm going to be a lot of redirecting, a lot of being on her to reinforce you need to be quiet, but I need to be way more proactive in that to help set her up for success. Now, when I'm at home and it's quiet, and even at puppy class, and we were just having this conversation amongst the puppy program managers, that if you have to step out to the side to work on something because they're in that red zone, totally, absolutely do this. Make sure that we are setting them up for success, that you don't have to stay in the loop of circle of how the other puppy raisers are doing. And I know locally I need to figure this out a little bit more with pulling, especially for first-time puppy raisers that may not know how to get something, is having myself, an apprentice, or one of the other puppy raisers pull that person off to the side, not because the dog is bad, but because they're overstimulated in this environment and we need to set them up for success. So I just saw a hand pop up. Hold on, let me, participants. Joan Cooper, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions that relate to what you were saying at the beginning in terms of a dog being startled or this fear aspect. I think we're all startled when there's a sudden loud noise.
Yes.
And of course, our dog should be as well. And to me, what I look at is how quickly do they recover? I mean, if it's a kind of a jump and then we move on with our walk, I'm assuming that's just A-okay.
That is, yes, absolutely. If it's going to startle us, it's fair to startle the dog. The only time that you would need to work on something is if the startle involves a bolt, okay? But this is also a 17-month-old dog. It's more important that a lot of younger puppies might get startled and their natural instinct is just to flee because they're a puppy, like a baby puppy. That you just then work through. The older dog bolting out of a startle, okay, that's bordering on a fear to sound versus just a startle, but you're absolutely correct. And we'll talk about that in this next session, is startling is different than a fear reaction, and we just move on. You let it happen, you regroup, and you move on. Because when she barked at me and I startled to her reaction, and that I saw her body flinch when my body flinched. So I know that in a way I actually reinforced the bark because she got a reaction out of me in that. But the thing is that I feel like I'm just confusing things here. A natural startle to a car door slamming. Whoa, what was that? Perfectly normal. And then we regroup. That doesn't need a correction. It just needs a cue reinforcement, AKA give them a command to get back into the position that they should be in.
And another quick question I've always been curious about, finishing up with my third dog. You know, dogs learn a lot by sniffing and smelling. I mean, how much is sniffing allowed? We walk constantly 3 or 4 times a day on a trail. And when, you know, how much sniffing is allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that actually was where I think I was starting to say that in the very, very beginning, where we were having a conversation at the pet store. I really did start this conversation, never finished it. Oh my gosh. We were having a conversation in a question and answer session about the dog being overly stimulated at the pet store. And it was a puppy, an older puppy, you know. And even this, so for example, here for her, when I took her out for a walk, I just walked down the hallway and let her sniff because she's not been back here before. There's all the smells of the dogs. Am I going to start getting her into training mode and getting her plastered to my side and making her sit? Nope, I just let her be. Now, and that's the other thing too, is like, if you've got a dog, you can have, let me go back to the PetSmart thing. I told the puppy raiser to go to PetSmart and walk up and down the aisles and just let them sniff and explore. And especially for a dog that's Camila's age, who is under the age of 5 months, letting them explore is completely fine. Now, going to the grocery store and letting them sniff and mill around, not appropriate. Going to the pet store, absolutely appropriate. Your neighborhood, you can do, you decide to pick between the next 3, you live in a suburb, so multiple homes, between 5 driveways, you're just letting them sniff and mill around, and you stop because there's a deep sniff or there's a trash bag, you let them sniff. And then the other walks are, you know, the other 5 houses, driveways, you're working on getting her to stay right by your side, you're working on eye contact. Every curb cut, you work on getting them to look up at you, you know, just reinforcing that good things happen when you're looking. So you mix it up a little bit on them. So yes, I think that especially the younger of the puppy is letting them explore and letting them sniff and letting them approach things is perfectly fair versus, and I have this problem where I'm like, I've got to start training. I've got to get them right by, you know, she has to have self-control. And I think that sometimes builds up anxiety. I think I did that to my border collies because some of our leash walking, they're all like, if I let them be more free when they were younger, they would probably be better now. Okay.
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Now, and also just to clarify and finish that out is by the time the dog's in professional training, you should be able to walk in your neighborhood without them needing to have these sniffing sessions. Yes, you absolutely can have sniffing sessions because they need to have downtime and brain relaxation where they don't have to think about anything also. But they should be able to walk with you for a good couple of miles where they're just, yep, let's go in and I don't have to sniff. And then at the end, they have their sniff fest.
Thank you. That's great.
Great. All right, I'm going to go back to my questions things here. Susan, I think your hand is still up from last session, and which is totally fine. But if you have any questions, you feel free to unmute because I don't want to feel like I'm skipping you. And maybe this is Melissa. I don't know who. It's totally helpful, and I hope people will share the information. I know changes can be hard for some, but that doesn't mean it's not good. And that's exactly it. It's just everything really isn't changing, but our approach, the expectations have not changed. Our approach is what is getting it was like finite was not the word. It's like influenced. I'm trying to use too big of a word here. We're just trying to streamline, make things more current, and really help the dogs to really focus that good things happen when you focus on the handler. So everything, if you guys are coming into this, because I am going to need to take a little bit of a break after to leave my mouth, give my mouth a break here, is self-control, okay? Attention on handler and self-control, okay? Those are the things that no matter what you do with the dogs, those are the things that help us out in professional training. Absolutely getting them to be able to know how to sit and to sit straight and be able to do an up and know the difference between lap and visit. Absolutely, they're very good things to know, but we can progress through professional training much easier when we have dogs that come in that aren't afraid to offer behavior for fear of getting a correction, okay? And I am not saying by any means that we've done things wrong in the past. We are just doing a different approach because we've always known for the years that the dogs that are like, okay, I'm going to offer something. Are you sure that's what I want? Okay, I did that wrong, but I'm going to try again versus, no, we're also going to have some dogs that they're going to try and then they're going to fail and they're like, I can't do it. We had one of our trainers had this dog come in and we were talking about her, and she really could only do about 5 repetitions with this dog before she had to stop training because the dog would just get too overwhelmed. Her personality, like from our last lecture, was one that she could only do like 5 repetitions. I would say that Camila is probably a moderate repetition, probably a normal repetition before she gets frustrated. And then we have the dogs that you could do 30 million repetitions and they're still like, let's continue to do this. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Let me know if you guys have any questions. It is 1:45. Hopefully you guys got something a little bit out. I see Debbie's on here and Debbie's like, and I do have to say, we have some dogs that barking is, so this is a huge shout out to all of you guys who have had dogs that are very barky and you're at your wit's end with them, okay? Please know that we are here and that sometimes that is not going to work. Sitting and ignoring them is not going to work, but it's something that we're going to try at first. We're going to catch the behaviors that we want. If you're continuing to have those behaviors, it's not going away on your own. We need to try something different because it's not every dog is different and every approach is just a little bit. So if you're struggling with a puppy that you're frustrated with, hang in there. Hang in there. We'll get there. All right, we're going to take a break. I'm going to stop recording here. All right.